we're back for another episode of the Lakers Fast Break podcast. It's Gerald Glassford, come right back at you here from Lakers Fast Break, Pop Culture Cosmos, Inside Sports Fantasy Football, and Game Source. We truly appreciate everyone out there listening to all of our shows. And if you can, please give us a 5. Well, if you could, give us a 10-star review. But right now, Apple only has it set for a 5-star review, wherever you get your podcasts. Plus, if you can like, share, subscribe, follow, or do anything that you can to support us right here at the Lakers Fast Break, Pop Culture Cosmos, Inside Sports Fantasy Football, Game Source, in honor of Ox 1947, LakersBall.com, but he's not here today. But I know who is here today. You got to go and support LakerTom and Jamie Sweet at Lakerholics.com, plus our good friends at the Hoopheads Podcast Network. And if you could support all of that, it is sincerely appreciated. And big shout out to J. John Cerceda for giving us the heart on Facebook. We truly appreciate you catching us once again. Plus also as well, a big heads up to all of our YouTube viewers. You guys have been amazing out there. You've kept going nonstop even after the season ended. You've been giving us good numbers, and I'm truly indebted to you. And it is truly, by all of us here at the Lakers Fast Break, very much appreciated. Well, the conference finals without the Lakers is still going on. The Devils in green ended up winning today and beating the Miami Heat, but we will go into the NBA playoffs here in a little bit. But of course, it all starts off with the Lakers. Do want to mention that I've got coming up here in the not too distant future a wonderful Lakers fan and also a guy that's an expert on the NBA draft, Stone Hansen. He returns here in an upcoming episode. He has much to say on the Lakers and what's going on there, plus also as well the NBA draft on the top 3 who he thinks will go first, second, and third. That's coming up here in a couple of weeks. But for right now, it is the Lakers. They could be in Chicago at this point in time, along with our good friend Rafael Barlow, who's there now for the NBA Draft Combine, checking out all the prospects, because the Lakers may look into getting into or buying their way into either a late first round or a second round draft choice if there's someone that they really like. So they're right now investigating to see if there's someone that could fill out the roster. And boy, do they need the roster filled out, because there's a lot of changes that need to be made. But the one biggest thing right now that's going on is for the biggest roster thing to be filled is the coach. Who is going to coach the team? That's still continued. There's no real update on the coaching carousel per se. Kenny Atkinson got interviewed for a second time by Charlotte. He is closely being monitored. So when you go back for a second interview, that means you might be in the running for the job, and as far as that's concerned. But I know he's already interviewed with the Lakers as well. But currently he is an assistant coach at Golden State, so I know his plate is full. There's other options for the Lakers as well, but no new persistent rumors on who might have interviewed with the job this week. Right now it's all about why and what they're interviewing about. And one of the things that interested us, and I sent this over to LakerTom and everybody else that was going to be on the show, about some of the things that are rumored to be asked of these coaching candidates. And the one thing that stood out, which I know is too much of LakerTom's chagrin, is, and I'll introduce you here in a sec, LakerTom, is basically they're being asked reportedly about how they would utilize Russell Westbrook, which would mean either that they would say, go ahead and trade him out, right? But I think in that jest, I think they're going to go ahead and say they're asking how they would utilize Russell Westbrook as far as if he were to stay on the team. So I'm here today with a good man indeed who will comment on this, who's been no short of words when it comes to Russell Westbrook and his situation. Someone who really wants Russell Westbrook gone in the worst way possible. Not as a person, because he's a very good person, obviously just immensely great in the fashion world and has contributed well as far as that's concerned. But as a player, yeah, absolutely. I don't think he wants him on the team, but it is a good man indeed. You got to go ahead and check out his latest article today at Lakerholics.com. It is LakerTom, and LakerTom, when reportedly you hear that and reportedly you read that these coaching candidates are being asked about how they would utilize Russell Westbrook, that doesn't give you the warm and fuzzies about the confidence that the team has in getting rid of him sooner rather than later.
Well, it's so easy because there's such low-hanging fruit that hangs around on Lakerland for writers and bloggers to just pluck out of the air and all of a sudden get a lot of attention.
You think?
And it's because subjects like this have such a visceral reaction from Laker fans,
You think?
especially ones who've gone through this season with Russell Westbrook and don't want to even consider the concept of going through a second season with him. I think it's part of. In retrospect, my first reaction was obviously one of, "You've got to be kidding me." I think the second reaction is that they're trying to do the right thing. Jovan Buha did for the Athletic did a tier analysis of the various coaches. Tier 1 was Nick Nurse, and there was nobody else on that tier. And he went down the line on it, and a couple of the guys from the Bucs staff were in the second tier.
By the way, count out Rajon Rondo after his controversy.
Yeah, right. Yeah, Rajon just shot himself in the foot.
Literally, almost. Yes.
Yeah. So when you're, how much do these interviews really count? If somebody can come in and knock everybody off of their socks and just all of a sudden win a job, I find that hard to believe. But this is one of those types of questions that HR guys would think is a perfect question for them to ask for the coaches who are coming in, because it gives them an analysis. It doesn't really say that we're going to keep Westbrook, but it says, what would you do and what would your approach be? And it could serve a couple of purposes. Number one, maybe there's something that they haven't thought of. Maybe some coach comes in and he says he's got a plan, and the Lakers say, well, man, okay, if we can somehow, what's better than a mulligan is not having it be a mistake, having it be just, injuries just prevented us from doing it. So they could, there's lots of different ways to spin it. I think that they want to get a lot of information and compare the answers of all of these different coaches and so forth. And the underlying thing that I keep hearing is that they're blaming Vogel for not being more authoritative, I think, and more demanding. And it's kind of funny because the criteria that they set up of choosing his assistant coaches and limiting the length of his contract and so forth, and pretty much decapitated his ability, going forward. And so, I'm sure that, Rambus in coaching sessions and things like that were things that happen because you don't have it. And hopefully the Lakers have learned from that too, that you interfere with a coach's job is not a way to build confidence for the team. And maybe that was part of what undermined Frank Vogel with the players this year, that basically they could see that his job was in trouble. Even though they may be the ones at fault for his job being in trouble, they could still see the dynamic that was going on between the media and between Frank and between, and then all of the discussions about Russ, and then the starting decisions with DeAndre Jordan and Drummond and all of those things that are front office interference with the coaching staff, because they didn't hire a coach who was confident enough that he would, walk away from the job like Ty Lue did if you're not going to give me the power that I need, or alternatively, demand it and say, listen, if you want me to be the coach, this is what you have to give me. So hopefully they're looking, I like a lot of the people that they're looking at. We'll see what happens. They've included some interviews for people that I think would be disastrous. And like Joe says, there's just too many chefs in the kitchen advising Jeannie what seasoning she should put in and what's most important in the recipe for finding the right coach. We'll have to see, I think the favorite still is Quinn Snyder. I think he's the favorite simply because he fits all of the things, and he did what he could do with the Utah Jazz. I don't think he could have been more successful. I don't think any coach could have been more successful in Utah over the period of time he had him. And I like his offensive approach and his defensive approach. I'm probably be frustrated as hell because he's very much like Bogle when it comes to substitutions and changing his starting lineup and making adjustments, but of course he came from an environment where the team was very stable, and very doubtful of the Lakers will be a stable franchise, even if we're winning, there's still going to be turnover every year. So, we've got a month till June 23rd is, I think, is that the draft?
In that range, yes, that's correct.
Yeah. And this is what, the 18th, 19th? 19th,
the 19th of May. Yep.
A little over a month. So we got a little over a month to wait. And I think June 29th is the deadline for Russell Westbrook to opt in. knowing Russ, he may wait until then just to make sure the Lakers, can't do anything until the last minute.
Well, I will know about that. I think he's going to go ahead and like you said, he could do that, but I have a feeling he's going to draw, as soon as that contract is put in front of him, he's going to sign it very quickly. Now, when it comes to Quinn Snyder.
Well, I don't think he signs anything. I think
he just says he has to
player option, so he has an option to exercise.
He picks up. He has the picks. That's what I meant. Picking up that.
He has to exercise that option.
That's what I meant. That's exactly
right. And he has to do it before June 29th.
Yeah, I'm sure he's going to be picking up that player.
Both he and Nunn.
Yeah,
although Nunn's announced that he's going to do his, but we haven't heard from Russ yet.
Well, it's $47 million. So tell me.
Of course he's going to do it, but
yes, I think the other question would be James Harden if he picks up his option or he decides to go ahead and renegotiate to get an extension. I think that's still up for debate on whether or not both sides on that equation when it comes to the 76ers. But that's
karma's coming around the corner for Daryl Morey too, isn't it?
Yes, that it is. But I wanted to ask you this. You mentioned Quinn Snyder. There's a little bit of a little hitch in the road then, when it comes to Quinn Snyder, and that's the fact he's still under contract.
Right.
So you're saying he's the favorite. He would have to be either relieved of his duties or somehow work out a trade.
I think the general sort of analysis from everything I've read on it is that we'll give a draft pick for Nick Nurse because he's that good, but nobody else.
Yeah,
Quinn Snyder would have to have reached a mutual agreement, which I'm sure if he wanted out, they'll let him out if he wants out.
I think that would be the case. Yes.
Yeah, so I think it'd be a mutual parting of the ways that okay, hey, listen. It's new ownership coming in. It's a franchise that's going to make some moves with their major players. One of the two major players are going to be traded, and and you've got. So it's not a situation that I think makes sense for them not to do something. So we'll see.
We'll see indeed. But once again, it's LakerTom for LakerHolics.com. Be part of the conversation today at LakerHolics.com. Wanted to ask you this as we head into our next subject, and that is with Russell Westbrook being part of everything that's going on, and the Lakers still much of a part of the jokes that are going on social media, but also as well in the analyst booth where they seem to still have fun and take shots at the Lakers. I know JJ Reddick, who recently retired from the league late last year, and Patrick Beverly, who is on vacation because he just lost with the Minnesota Timberwolves. They've had a fun time going back and forth, becoming the new faces of ESPN's NBA coverage. And I know they've made a lot of inferences and said a lot of things. I know JJ Reddick recently made statements that got really everybody up in arms that because of his last, I guess he said some words of disrespect about Bob Cousy and some other old-time players that he showed a lot of disrespect for in some statements. And then Patrick Beverly in recent days has said a lot and gotten everybody up in arms, from everybody from Chris Paul to the Lakers, as far as saying, adding on the asterisk bubble comment in regards to what everybody says about that didn't win a championship, or their favorite team didn't win the championship in the bubble. was the Lakers. And so it's got to be an asterisk on that. So your thoughts on what's going on with those guys, and the fact is Kendrick Perkins has said a lot in days that's gotten a lot of people upset as well. Your thoughts on these ex-players, or in the case of Beverly, just player that's going on vacation that looks like he's going to become, one of those talking mouths when his career and when his playing days are done. But your thoughts on these type of ex-athletes? It seems to be getting a little bit more harder edged in what their commentary is more than ever.
It also seems to happen more often the closer they come to the end of their careers as players.
Yeah. And Draymond Green, just to let you know, has signed a contract with TNT. So once his playing days are done, he'll be on that side of the ball too.
Well, everybody sees it as the natural thing. You're either going to go into coaching or you're going into broadcasting, or some sort of connection there that allows you to still have a hand in the sport that got you there. Let's look at things one at a time. The koozie stuff, yeah, in a way, those guys are jokes compared to the players that are playing today and the skill sets that the players have today and so forth. But man, these are the guys who paved the way for how much money you're making and the lifestyle you're living. So show some respect, man. Seriously, the basketball gods will punish you if you keep doing stuff like that. Or they should, at least, Yeah,
because I'm not going to ask you. I'm not going to ask you, LakerTom, who saw Bob Cousy back in the day. I'm not going to say, "Hey, LakerTom, do you think Bob Cousy would dominate in the playoffs right now?" And I think the answer, we both know that would be. But at least be respectful, like you said, for the path he paved for the players today.
Yeah, when you go to your $5 million house and and you're driving your $200,000 car, you know exactly who paved that road for you.
Yeah, because these guys weren't making.
And those guys, man, remember back in those days, those guys had part-time jobs,
and they did back to back to back.
It's a whole different world, and it's just amazing when I think back, because I'm not sure if I really saw Cousy play, live on television. I know I saw Bob Pettit play. I saw the Hawks win a championship. I saw the Celtics win a lot of championships against the Lakers. And man, the game really has changed dramatically. Now it's, the 3-point shot, the Euro step, all of those things have so changed how the game is played completely. The Euro step has become a real bully ball move now. I think that before it was always an evasive move, and now it's been turned into. I was teaching my granddaughter that same thing of being able just to, cross that step over and change sides, that you're going in and attacking the defender, and you're liable to get fouled when you do that.
Yeah. So, it's just amazing, like you said, where we've come from where we've been. And, I don't think that's a fair comparison. When you can't, it just seems to be, even when it comes to like Wilt Chamberlain, no matter how much he dominated at his level back then, it is so hard to say, oh, yes, can Wilt be that same individual today? I don't think that's fair. That's a fair comparison, because again, you're dealing with different athletes, different times.
But by the same token, those guys would. There are players, iconic players from every generation in the 75 years that the NBA has been in existence, who, if you took them in their prime and put them in the league today, they'd still be stars.
I wouldn't say Wilt Chamberlain would be bad by any stretch.
Wilt would dominate, man. At his peak, he was unstoppable.
Although then they go 5 out and he'd be played off the court like every other center in the league, seemingly. Yep. So playoff time comes, you're off the court, Wilt. Sorry. So
but guys like him, can you remember the old 1-on-1 that they used to have as the All-Star game, or actually was it just a tournament? I think was sponsored. It was won by Rudy Tomjanovich, and the game was. When I was growing up and playing basketball, we all played that game 1-on-1.
Yeah.
And it was a game basically winners outs, and you could take guys underneath. There was no 3-point. There's no 3-second calls. Yeah. You could take guys underneath and just pump fake them until you just got, and you just shot, and you just didn't give the other guy the ball. That's how you win the game.
Well, I'll tell you what, it's something, again, I think it needs to be put in perspective, but I didn't appreciate those comments. I think that was very disrespectful to those who came before him as far as what
Pat Bev wants to be a Laker, though.
What, Pat Bev?
He
Okay.
wants to be the filler on the trade for Russell Westbrook for D'Angelo Russell.
Well, that's what Reddick said about disrespectful to those, Bob Cousy and those in the past. But when it comes to Pat Beverly, he has been all over the place. He went off on
God, I don't want him on my team.
Chris Paul. Well,
I really don't want him on my team.
He was drafted by your team and my team, the Lakers.
My team.
So
I respect him as a player, and I was probably, most players who played against me probably thought I was Pat Bev type of player. I was more of an irritant.
But now he's on the wrong side of 30. People need to mention that as well, with a contract that's not exactly.
I hate small guards too. I mean, in the NBA, you end up being
Brunson, though,
and even though Pat's a good defender, he ends up being hunted a lot simply because he's only 6'1".
Well, we saw Chris Paul finally, people figuring out that Chris Paul, is not that tall and can be actually exploited on the defensive end, and we saw that come to fruition.
Well, I don't know. There's talk now that he's got $90 million left on 3 years and $90 million. 3 years at $30 million left on his contract. Maybe they'll trade him for Russ.
Oh, my gosh. Yeah, wouldn't Joe love that? The guy who actually has been pining and living that nightmare in regards to the Chris Paul trade.
We finally get Chris Paul when he's over the hill.
Yes, absolutely, indeed. That would be the last laugh for the Lakers.
Although, I mean, just one series ago, he was 14 for 14 from the field in a killer game to cinch moving on in the playoffs, man.
Well, if that's the case, and like I said, this week, Pat Beverly has said a lot of things that angered a lot of people out there. But if you were to go ahead and look at the landscape, you watch a lot of sports television like I do. You hear a lot of on the radio. You hear a lot of Sirius XM that's out there with the NBA channel. Who of the ex-players right now, and that includes the TNT guys, Sirius XM guys, ESPN, Fox Sports, whoever you want to go through, who is the one that stands out to you as an ex-player that gives you just some type of reassurance as a listener, some type of, this guy's really talking about. Like Tony Romo, he goes into the booth after he ends his playing days and instantly becomes a premier analyst in the league. People are just loving what he does as far as how he's anticipating the plays and things of that nature, because he's just fresh off of the game, fresh off of the field. So he's able to see things in a great perspective. Who out there, as far as an ex-player in the NBA is concerned, that's covering the NBA, is really someone that you admire and actually follow?
I like Eddie Johnson.
He's opinionated, but he's good.
He's opinionated, but I
love him and Justin Termini together.
I like how he stands up to Justin Termini. And
yes.
So that's always a fun situation. Of the guys on Sirius XM, and I do listen to that quite a bit. Amina Hassan, I like him a lot.
Oh, he's awesome. Absolutely,
he's probably my favorite of all of the various.
Excellent choice.
He just has
he's a former front office person.
A sense of irony and intelligence about the sport, and a great sense of humor, a real dry, but a great sense of humor.
I just want to let everybody know he's a former front office personnel. Right. If you're not familiar with his work.
Well, he played basketball semi-pro, I think.
Yeah, but he never played in the NBA. But he's he's a former front office personnel, most prominently with the Phoenix Suns. But yeah, excellent choice. He's probably one of my favorites out there that knows the league probably better than anybody else that's talking out there.
There's so many of those guys just drive me nuts because of their prejudices that just I go crazy about. Antonio Daniels, I have a lot of respect for Antonio Daniels simply because he's on that morning show and he basically is always fighting back against the cliches and assumptions that all of the other people on the program are always making about how this is always this way or that and so forth. It has a great perspective from a player is that things are usually a little simpler sometimes than people make them out to be.
Is there anyone on the TV that you're admiring as far as the work that they're doing?
Of the television teams,
We all know inside the NBA is great, but it's usually great for comedic reasons.
Yeah, I'm of that group of people. Ernie is probably my favorite over Kenny, and I do like Shaq and Charles's humor and so forth. Um, um, I can't think of her name now. Who's the female announcer who's doing color on the NBA?
Malika Andrews?
No. She's actually
Doris Burke.
Doris Burke.
Yes.
I think she's terrific. She's probably of the TV people, she may be the ones that are the best. I mean, I have a lot of I really dislike the ESPN with. I mean, you're bringing in personalities rather than people who really understand the sport or former players and so forth. Mm-hmm. Stephen A. Smith for me and Wilbon on as your main attractions in the foursome that you've got on ESPN, I think is a terrible combination. I turn the sound off every time I see them talking,
Yeah.
I still like the TNT crew.
Yeah.
But I haven't really found any of these other crews that are doing the post game stuff at all having created an identity. They're sort of like Sirius XM, that 50% of the shows don't have the people who are part of the show. They have guests because the people who are part of the show either work for a basketball team like Eddie Johnson does, or have other gigs happening, or
Well, one of those individuals you didn't mention that I kind of like is actually on both SiriusXM and ESPN, and that's Tim Legler, who provides to me some good insight. I think
he's great. He hates the Lakers.
He does.
He really is anti-Laker on almost every comment he makes.
Well, that's almost pretty much any of the individual. It seems like you always get for the most part that on ESPN, it seems like they have they want to cover
Legler actually is gleeful when he has bad news about the Lakers.
But I'm talking about his coverage
of the smile across the radio, man.
But his coverage of the NBA, I think he does have right now during the playoffs.
He's a smart guy, and he understands the game very well. But
I think he probably gets tired of the fact that ESPN has a priority of covering everything Lakers.
I don't know. He must be a Celtics fan or something like that.
Robert Carter is here. He wanted to go ahead and say in the chat room that they need Victor Oladipo. Well, Victor Oladipo, unfortunately for tonight on Miami, didn't do very much. In fact, the whole team didn't do very much, but we'll see what happens if he goes.
Well, there is no, it's an interesting situation because the Lakers' job this offseason, in my opinion, is to find 4 or 5 legitimate rotation players who could start on an NBA team to go along with LeBron and AD. Because last year, the guys we chose, Russell Westbrook, Kendrick Nunn, and Taylor Horton-Tucker, were all busts, basically. And we need those players because you can't – LeBron and AD and a bunch of minimum salary guys is not enough to win a championship. Yeah. So it's the players that we're able to land. It's the 2 players we'll get for Westbrook and a pick. The 1 player we'll get for Taylor Horton-Tucker and a pick. And then there's this whole issue about hard capping so that we get the $10.3 million MLE and a $4 million BAE. So $10 million MLE, because of how few teams have salary cap have cap space this summer, there's like 6 or 7 teams that'll have the $10 million MLE and a whole bunch of teams that'll have the $6 million MLE. But the $10 million MLE is going to be a very good player. It's going to be a player like a Victor Oladipo or a Bruce Brown or Isaiah Hartenstein, they're going to be really, really good players because that is going to be the salary that 90% of the good players in the league are going to be going after. There'll be very little money for anything over the MLE because nobody has anything except for the exceptions to use. Yeah. The few teams that have big money, most players don't want to go there because they're not where you're going to win. And it'll be fun to see. The Lakers could conceivably land a player like Oladipo with their MLE or Hartenstein or somebody like that.
Absolutely. But some
Or
great
two or
thoughts.
three players who are splitting in $3.5 million each, for example, which is better than having a minimum salary player because you're at least getting guys who are better than earning the least that they can earn, you know.
Well, it's going to be very interesting come free agency for that decision to be made. And Victor Oladipo, if he stays healthy, those are the
Yeah.
words on probably anybody that we're getting or trading for. If we trade,
Yeah.
from Russell Westbrook, if we trade Russell
That's the
Westbrook,
reason why some of those good names are on that list.
yeah, if
They wouldn't be on
he
that list if they
stays
didn't have that.
healthy,
If they
yes,
didn't have that little flag on them, that little red
yes,
flag, Gerald.
exactly.
Yeah,
That's
little red
that's
cross right next to the name tells you why they're on the list.
Yes. If he stays healthy, they should all change their middle names to that. But before we
Yeah.
head on out, my friend, it is the NBA playoffs. Right now, again, we just saw earlier this evening the Boston Celtics tie up the series with a dominating win in Miami. They got Al Horford and Marcus Smart back, and that really boosted
Where
their
did Al
overall.
Horford come from, man?
He
He put
got him.
himself in a time machine and went back like 3 years.
And it does that for a game, and then the next game he kind of falters. So he had that huge game in the playoffs in the last round, and then the next game he kind of faltered. But I will say that is a great lift for them. He obviously the past few days off because of health and safety protocols did him wonders as far as it's concerned. So he did look really good contributing today. Marcus Smart on a distribution end really helped facilitate things, and of
God, I
course
love
on the
Marcus
defensive end.
Smart.
Shooting wise, it's still rough going, but he didn't need to go ahead and shoot well because everybody else on the team seemingly shot well. So they went on their way to a big win in Miami and are now tied heading into Boston. So
And they have home court advantage now.
and yep, they now have home court advantage. So we'll see what happens there this weekend as Miami tries to go ahead and wrest that back from
I'm
Boston.
changing my prediction.
Yeah, I know. It's looking more like I might have to change mine as well because Boston really looked dominating. I take one quarter out of the equation in these last 8 quarters, and you really have a full domination by Boston. It's just that one quarter, the third quarter, in the first game that really is the difference and the reason why they're tied up at this point in time. But the other game, the other series involved, and that's going to start game 2 tomorrow night as we're recording this, and that is Golden State with the 1-0 lead over Dallas. I'm not panicking too much on my pick because I picked Dallas to go ahead and win in 6 because of the fact that they started off this slow last round.
Well, and
against
they're just
Phoenix.
holding serve. It's
Yeah.
different. It's different than the Celtics situation because the Celtics stole home court advantage.
Yes.
Therefore, they are definitely the heavy favorite now in the East, whereas the Warriors simply held court. They held serve.
Let
So
me
if they
ask you
hold
this.
serve again, it's wait until somebody wins the game. If it goes to game 7, it's a 60-40 chance, 60% for the home team, 40% for the other team. We'll have to see what happens.
Let me ask you this, though, before we head on out. When it concerns this series, you've seen a Jekyll and Hyde team in the Golden State Warriors. They played tremendously in game 1 of this series. But remember, this team is the team a week ago that got killed in Memphis.
Right. Yeah.
This is a team that just seems
but the coach wasn't there.
Yeah, the coach wasn't there.
They thought they were in Sacramento. They thought they were in Sacramento because Mike Brown was coaching.
Yeah, it looked like it indeed. But when it concerns, what happens with the Warriors, when everything's clicking, it is going to be really hard for them to be beaten by anybody. But the thing is, they often hurt themselves quite a bit. They're very turnover prone. They are committing to mistakes at times. They are a little bit undersized at positions, and I thought Luka was going to take advantage, but he was just bottled up the entire game in game 1. Do you think that the Warriors will continue to have that kind of success for a 7-game series?
In a normal year, and I don't think this is a normal year. In a normal year, I think that you can take a lot more out of a dominant victory. For example, I don't have any confidence at all that Miami can come back. I just don't see them coming back against the Celtics. And it's primarily because of the defense of the Celtics and Marcus Smart. Mm-hmm. There's a big reason why all of a sudden this game, was under control for Boston right from the start of the game, whereas the other game wasn't. They just didn't have their stopper. Tatum and Brown are pretty good defenders, but they're not Marcus Smart. There's a reason he was Defensive Player of the Year. You bring him in all of a sudden and tell him, "Hey, go stop that guy who killed us the other game," and that's what he did. But I see something strange about this year, not just, and the injuries maybe have exacerbated it, but it's a theme that I've had all year long, that I sort of see a changing of the guard. It's certain players getting to the third or fourth year. It's Luka emerging. I didn't think that he could take them through that last series. I really didn't. And yet the way he dominated that game 7 was masterful, really masterful. He's going to be the NBA's best player in a couple of years, I think. Better than Giannis.
That's a great possibility. He's just got to go ahead and commit on the defensive end. I really just think that that's the only missing piece. Well, and I think he can do it.
Got to get into shape. He's got to get into shape.
Yeah. A lot better shape.
I mean,
from the get-go.
6'8". What is he? I must weigh 250.
He's around 240, 245, I think. Yeah, in that range.
6'8", 245, man. I mean, because he bounces people off.
Yeah, absolutely. He loves it when the smaller
he's not buff, but he bounces people off.
Yeah.
Very much in the same way as Jokic does.
Yeah.
Jokic does the same thing. It's that they've got that inertia that comes from size that's like sumo wrestlers.
Absolutely.
You're not going to move me, man. Yeah. So anyway, I see that it's like, I think that there's still a chance in the Western Conference. I think it's going to be the Celtics versus whoever wins the Western Conference Finals. And right now, I think it'll go down to Game 7. I think that it's going to be hard for the visiting team to win these games, because these two teams know that whoever loses the first game in a road is probably going to lose the series.
Yep.
It means that there's a priority that both teams have that the teams that they've beaten in the past didn't have, and that's why they're not there.
I agree with you. It just seems like at some point in time it's going to be whoever wins. That's usually say when the series starts, it's usually when somebody wins on the road. So the series.
It's hard to imagine anybody other than Steph Curry winning MVP in the finals.
Well, right now, you've got to have some.
Could it be Jason Tatum?
Could be. Could it be Jordan Poole? You never know. I think when it comes to Clay, though,
I don't want the Celtics in the finals, but I don't see how they were gonna keep them out now.
I don't see how, indeed, myself, because they had a dominating performance.
The only thing that could work is just what I said about the fact that these are new teams that don't. I mean, just look at it. You got the Celtics on the one hand, who, what's the best that they've done? They won the conference finals 2 years ago or 3 years ago, was it? So they're one of the teams that is there. And then the other team, Miami Heat, nobody really expected Miami Heat to be there. What seeds are these? They're the 4 and 5 seeds? No, they can't be the 4 and 5 seeds.
Right now it's 3 and 4. Is
3 and 4 seeds?
Yeah.
And in the West, we've got what seeds?
No, the West is 3 and 4. When it comes to the East, it's 1 and 2. Miami won the Eastern Conference, and
really,
Boston,
they had the best record.
Yep, and Boston had the second best record.
No kidding, surprising.
Yes, that's
because but everybody sort of thought that Brooklyn and Philadelphia were better teams.
Well, there were 3 teams.
This is sort of like the Utah Jazz winning the West.
Well, there was 3 teams that had the same record for second place: Boston, Milwaukee, and Philadelphia. But Boston had the tiebreaker. So,
I see. Okay.
So there you go. But LakerTom, it's been great talking to you today. As far as it's concerned, great to have you here. We're going to be going ahead and talk more about what's going on with the Lakers in the NBA playoffs on Sunday night. But before we head on out, I know you've got an article that's coming out soon, and that's out already on LakerHolics.com. I know Jamie Sweet is there doing his 5 things, but please tell everybody why they need to hang out for a bit at LakerHolics.com.
Well, it's actually a great time to stop by LakerHolics.com. I think one of the things that everybody will appreciate about it is that we try to curate a lot of stories and things that are happening in the Lakers that have a different point of view. And we try to create subjects that drive conversations so that the readers and the members on the site can learn more and inform themselves more and get different points of views on what the Lakers should do about the coaching situation, what they should do about free agency, what they should do about the trades, what they should do with Russ and Talon and the other players. So it's really, like Gerald says, the NBA does not have an off season. It's 12 months around. It's 24/7. And then the same thing happens on LakerHolics.com. If you're at all interested in discussing who and why the Lakers should make the moves that they should make and what kind of team we really should have and what you really think of various players and various trade proposals and various proposed coaches, it's a great site to express your knowledge of the Lakers and to learn more and make some friends.
Absolutely, indeed. So be part of the conversation today at LakerHolics.com. Once again, a huge shout out to everyone that watches us on the YouTube channel. Please go ahead and follow us today on YouTube. We have another great performance on our last video. I cannot thank you enough. Seeing the numbers, I'm just overwhelmed. It just makes me so happy that people are not only watching, but watching in great numbers on our YouTube channel. So please, a big shout out to you as always, and to everyone that watches or listens to us right here at the Lakers Fast Break. But Tom, great to have you here once again. We'll be talking more NBA playoffs, maybe some more Lakers rumors. Who knows? Will Tom get interviewed for the Lakers coaching job and be asked, what would he do to be utilizing Russell Westbrook? And, his answer would probably include a lot of four-letter words too as well. But it is LakerTom. It is Gerald Glassford. Hopefully we'll get Joe Soro, Jamie Sweet, maybe Sean Grice, maybe even L. Rob on the next show. Hoping to see them there, but I'm also hoping to see you there as well, right here at the Lakers Fast Break Podcast.